A couple of years ago, I hosted Michael Forrest on the channel, as he has a collection of artifacts from Mexico that depict alien beings. Some of the pieces have been carbon dated to older than 8,000 years, which predates the Sumerians. To dig deeper, Trevor Hawke's research group has not only performed additional carbon dating on these artifacts, but has used a variety of other scientific methods to study them, which can help define if they're fake or real. Trevor recently posted two papers online with the detailed methods and analyses for all to critique. And today, Trevor will review these data. So with that, welcome, Trevor.
Hey, gang. Nice to see you all. Thanks for having me, Mike.
Yeah, my pleasure, Trevor. I mean, you're on the cutting edge of this stuff. And, what's interesting is that so many people, I think most people's initial intention is these are fake. There's no way there's real. The things that they're depicting on this, it looks modern.
Right.
Even I've seen the Ancient Alien guys, Giorgio. So Mike Forrest posted something on Instagram, them actually digging this stuff out of the ground in Mexico. And Giorgio was on the page screaming fakes. Like,
hmm
how would he know? How does he have any idea? Like, so what your work and actually doing the actual scientific analyses of these stuff of this stuff, and we'll jump all into that, is essential to this process to really defining, the fake from the real. So I think maybe we should talk about your background, how you got into this, and then maybe we can go through the methods that you're using, and
Right.
yeah, maybe go from there.
Great. Well, my background, my scientific training comes from the private sector. I'm not academically trained. I worked with Nassim Haramein at his quantum physics laboratory for about 3.5 years. During that time, we were investigating all types of scientific breakthroughs in energy, propulsion, hardware. Technology was essentially our bread and butter. But along the way, Nassim also had a collection of these artifacts that you've brought up. So you did mention earlier that at face value, they are impossibly real. They look new. They have depictions of UFO saucers like we see in pop culture. All of these observations are entirely valid, and many of the researchers who are involved arrived there as well. It's sort of this process of really digging into them. And I've been lucky to have access to the materials, not just photos or videos, but real private collections. So, there's a lot, there's a big body of evidence to these collections. There's a lot of work, a lot of materials. So, um, the reality is that fakes do exist, like in the art market or the antiquities market on any level, from oil paintings to terracotta to tapestries. Clever people are motivated to do clever things. However, when you really sit with the pieces and experience them in a laboratory setting, you see that there's more than meets the eye. Okay. Um, their composition, their material composition is the focal point of my recent research. You know, we're not really talking about the aliens. It's sort of intrinsically bound. I've had scientists say, oh, wow, these materials are really great, but someone must have faked the aliens after or something. You can't skirt around it. This collection, the defining essence, the core frequency is this contact event with ancient civilizations and extraterrestrials, or possibly crypto-terrestrials, beings not from outer space, but within our own planet. So, anyways, the collections are very interesting. They're very finely detailed with a lot of written language, with a lot of symbology and interactions being depicted with genetic exchange. So, um, At that level, there's a lot to unpack at that level. But in terms of the first principles, what is this? What is it made of? Is it old? You know, that's where my focus has been the last 2 years. I've had some breakthroughs that were unexpected as they come sometimes. But essentially, my core thesis is that these materials in the artifacts are of an engineered composition. They're not natural, meaning even to this day, people call them fake alien rocks. I'd like to politely ask you call them fake alien ceramics. If you're going to call them fake, at least be correct because they're not rocks. They have a very unique composition. I have some pieces with me. We're going to do some deep dives into the data and the evidence that I found to show that these are more like a ceramic, more like a an engineered material. Um, and the paper that I recently released is sort of the first step in this direction. It's gathered a lot of interest internationally. The topic is very intriguing. I'm happy to report that my original sample group that I tested and demonstrate the evidence for is in possession of university professors to further analyze, to confirm or deny my results. So the breakthroughs that I had earlier this year led to a new way of carbon dating these artifacts because over the years of my experience, the carbon 14 dating was occurring through this resinous glue, this adhesive glue that's bound in certain pieces. That those dates many years ago were around 8,500 BP, some even going much further. At the time it was, it's interesting. Is it definitive? Not exactly, right? But this year in February, I finally had the chance to take a new type of sample, not from the adhesive glue, but from the inner core material of these artifacts. So, as I have mentioned, the composition is engineered. So, in that composition, there happens to be organic chemistry present in these artifacts, meaning they're like a composite. So that organic chemistry, when I'm taking a small drill sample and sending that out for carbon dating, those dates aligned precisely with the previous dates we got. So for now, that's the best I got. There's more opportunities, more avenues to date the materials, but I don't think they're old. They measure to be old. Okay. So, and with independent laboratories. And of course, more research is always warranted, but the evidence suggests that these materials are genuine, at least the ones in my sample group. Okay. Let's make that known. And yes, it is perplexing. How could these exist? How could they not be protected? How could they not be cataloged? So that's what myself, Mike, other friends, Joshua Sizzler, Pamela, and many others have sort of taken it upon their own. It's a passion project. People believe that these are fake. They have every right to. We've seen the evidence to support that they're genuine. We'll continue to learn. There are more avenues opening up, but there's not a lot of room in the middle. It's like, and even the idea of a fake an emulation of something that's real. It sort of is built upon the idea of a genuine piece. So beyond that, the tooling, the process, someone made these, right? Whether you believe it was last week or 8,000 years ago, someone made them. So there will be traces, evidence, clues of how they made it. What is it? So when I've scanned with high resolution surface topography, these engravings on the surface, you really can't even feel them. Like these here, they're about 25 to 30 microns in depth. They show like a plowing effect in the material, meaning it was soft. This isn't percussive chiseling or rotary drill bit, but a technique likely utilized in a curing phase of the material. So in the paper, I characterize these materials as geopolymer ceramics, not natural rocks. So with that being said, there's really a buffet of materials within one collection. So there's more to learn. I'm really excited that university professors and people like yourself in the audience are interested. It's very interesting. And we will learn together. Mike, our friend Mike, his background, his involvement is very heavy in a different area of Mexico, known as Tula. That's a whole nother rodeo. It's a whole nother body of work. These pieces that I'm studying come from a neighboring site in Jalisco. Mike, has some experience there too, but the cat's out of the bag to some degree. I think the public is becoming more aware of this. The taboo or the discrimination against them is really washing away because we're bringing, myself and colleagues of mine, we're bringing real science, we're bringing genuine inquiry, we're bringing, a grounded perspective. So yeah, it's tough. It's tough. It's not, the world is not as black and white as people would like it to be, An archaeologist finds these, reports them, everything. It doesn't always work out that way. So these have slipped through the cracks, and maybe because there's ETs all over them, probably because that is a lot for people. I think now we're, living through that change, that era, that disclosure. So that's part of why I figured I might as well share this information for people because, hey, if you believe in aliens and you believe they may have engineered our species, maybe this serves as evidence of that. Maybe not. Maybe you don't give a shit, but they're very interesting, and I think that they will have a positive impact on our remembrance, our recognition of our real deeper history. This topic, again, is not as linear and logical as some would like it to be. But that's part of the mystery.
All right, I've got so many rabbit holes to go down there, but first, a quick comment. So you mentioned that you're not academically trained, and I am, right? And I say this humbly, right? So I did earn my PhD in physiology. I do have like 5,000 citations. Granted, it's not in what, material science and what you're doing, but
Mm-hmm.
this idea of being academically trained versus not, I can see you getting pushback because you're not quote unquote academically trained. But the fact is, you should, and this is coming from someone who has a PhD. I've seen plenty of people, do the minimum to get their PhD in a science related field and then leave. Never publish a paper. They'll forever have PhD next to their name. They call themselves a scientist, but they've never done anything scientific, literally
Right.
never. On the other hand, there are people like you, and I'm grateful, eternally grateful, because uh, having gone through your paper, and these aren't like 3-page papers, 50 something page papers for each of them, and we'll dig into all of that, but rigorous scientific analysis for all to judge, whether it's peer review, the broader public. So,
Right.
I mean, I think of you as a scientist, for whatever that means, for whatever it's worth. You are on the cutting edge of science and being a scientist. So, it's great. All right, now, in terms of so many rabbit holes where I want to go down. So I guess
Sure.
first they kind of go together, the geopolymer and the composition of the geopolymers, and how easy or difficult it would be to fake that. Like,
Right.
so in terms of when you think of, you could say, well, sure, any advanced culture, first of all, me and my buddies aren't in the corner making geopolymers and megaliths. It doesn't exist. And when you think about evolution of architecture, usually things get, are worse and then they evolve and they get better, right? But then you see these pieces that you've got, which have
Hmm.
have been basically built to stand the test of time, right? They're
Exactly.
and this is part of, so I'm hyper longevity focused. That's the focus of my
Mhm.
channel. It's not alien artifacts. But when I think of the civilization that made these, whether it was humans, human alien hybrids, aliens,
Mhm.
whatever it is, cryptoterrestrials, this was a longevity focused civilization. This was a civilization that knew that the things they created or erected, megaliths, would last a long ass time. They're not building houses to last 100 years. They're building structures that will last tens of thousands, if not for longer. So that's where my
Mhm.
interest comes from. But in terms of that technology just popping up, right? So whether it's 8,000 BP or 20,000, some of the pieces you've dated, um, what's different about the geopolymer science that makes it a better approach for whether it's building the ceramic-like materials that you have, those pieces,
Right.
or the megalithic structures like in Peru, which, as you've shown, those are geopolymers too. Those were casted. Those aren't stone. Those are casted geopolymers. So what is special about the chemical composition of the geopolymers? And then I don't know, maybe you have some insight about this, but how would they even know to come up with that? Like it just pops up on
Mhm.
the scene out of nowhere. Or do we go from like Darren Kuyu and that and the what's that region, the
Göbekli Tepe area
Göbekli
or
Tepe 12,000 years ago, which clearly that version, I don't know if that's geopolymer or not, but you can see it's kind of rough looking. It's not like the stuff in Peru and the megaliths in Peru, which, the stone, the geopolymer blocks essentially molded together perfectly, like this
Mhm.
perfect architecture compared to Göbekli Tepe. So what is it about that geopolymer technology that, one, it pops up out of nowhere seemingly, and then two, like the chemical composition of it that makes it superior to building with stone?
Right. This is the crux of the issue. Um, Something to set the stage or give some context for the audience or viewers. We are departing. We're doing a fundamental shift because um, most people are under the spell or the you fill in the blank, the conditioning, whatever, of reductive manufacturing, meaning the pyramids, Peru, these artifacts. Someone took a block, quarried it out, chiseled it, reductive manufacturing, reduce into form. That's what we do with CNCs and lathes and yeah, all of our high tech stuff, right? And we're applying our modern thinking and our modern tools to ancient subjects, which hasn't gone very good. So we're doing a fundamental departure from this reductive manufacturing into additive manufacturing, right? I grew the megaliths. I baked them. I mixed them, right? So the word geopolymer is a very technical word. And that's why I think it goes like this a lot of times. For me too, I had to learn a lot about it. the idea with the geopolymer is it's a three-dimensional rigid structure that is achieved through natural chemistry, basic chemistry. That rigid structure is bound by chains, polymers, that link together to form these structures. Those chains are generally composed of silicon and aluminum in various proportions, various quantities, meaning geopolymers are really a big umbrella. You can make concrete, you can make ceramic, um, you can engineer these formulas to have different mechanical, thermal, and even electrical conductivity. So, again, in our modern era, this material does serve as a solution to our failing infrastructure and things of that nature. Now, to bring it back home to the artifacts and the megaliths, this composition is engineered, unnatural. Because it's engineered, it is designed to, as you said, stand the test of time. This fundamental shift into additive manufacturing and understanding the nature of geopolymer materials, um, when you mix them and make them, they're very sticky. Those polymer chains are forming. I actually sometimes use the analogy of bread making. Flour and water is not bread. You need yeast. Also, when you make bread, there are proportions to your mix. So, this interpretation opens up some really new perspectives on what we observe when we go to these ancient sites. Um, Meaning their composition, their material composition, when you look at the whole structure of Sacsayhuaman, it's one material, it's one color, it's one texture. Same with the Cori Concha. Different type of material, but it looks 3D printed. It's one thing. So those are engineered, those are formulated. My research suggests that they are formulated with natural components, natural chemistry, locally available to Cusco or Ollantaytambo or wherever you want to build. We can get you through llama caravans as much sand, chemistry, labor, to make it happen. The artifacts are much more complex. We talked about briefly before we recorded that the material composition, it's not one thing. It's a buffet of materials. It's a buffet of, even within one artifact, you may have several different, all of these tiles, all of these colors are unique. These are bound onto a backing plate. So, what kind of rock is this? It's like um, the artifacts, they're very unique. They're very unique. And the research that I've done is a great first step. And it's got good feedback, good support. So, we'll learn more about them. Um, my personal opinion is that geopolymer technologies, we just put the tail on the donkey, pin the tail on the donkey. That is the global lost technology, in my opinion. Um, how we learned it, human ingenuity, trial and error, maybe interactions with extraterrestrials who taught us how to make things that last. Um, Again, there's just so many parallels here. But one thing I do want to mention about the artifacts, especially in the context of them being fake, or rather looking brand new, I agree. Let me explain. They look brand new because they are shiny. They have this surface glaze. Interestingly, in the most basic psychological sense, when humans see things that are shiny, they can't be old. You look at a rusty old car, a rusty old piece of machinery, you can see it's weathered, you can see it's aged. These don't, they do have signs of aging, they do have signs of weathering, but generally they present very well. They look new, which I agree. What I'll say is they were born that way, meaning in the artifact paper, I talk about a self-glazing chemistry, a self-glazing process. My idea is that these artifacts are like a ceramic, like, not the same. They're fired at ultra low temperatures, which may have been the reason that the organic chemistry is preserved. So this unique material type, this unique composition has the capacity to create this nanoporous surface. So acids, contamination, they're very stable. They're very chemically stable. So they do resist wear and tear. They do break. They are fragile. They do have signs of weathering. But in that most basic understanding, them being shiny, I can see how that makes them appear new. You know, interestingly, there are megaliths that are shiny. There are Egyptian statues that are very shiny. And we, I say we, the other guys, they say, look, they polished them so well. How did they polish the fingernails? How did they polish the ear? They didn't. These statues, these monuments, they were born this way. Remember that in that chain, the polymer chain, silicon is one of the main ingredients. Glass. Glass. We're making glass at ultra low temperatures, not with butane torches and high heat. The glass is dissolved and restructures into these forms. So, you know, the serapium, you know, there's even Olmec jade figures and things like that. I personally don't believe that they were mechanically or abrasively polished. Again, that's us applying our thinking. I think that they are materials formulated from natural ingredients that have this nanoporosity. They have this structure. They have this vitreous look. That's another interesting, you know, you see people at the megalithic sites and they go, look, it's melted. Maybe the cataclysms did that, or the meteorites did that. The temperatures required to melt natural stone is very, 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 very high. With the geopolymer interpretation, it's more that they're naturally glassy. It's not that they were polished that way. It's that they were literally made that way. And that's part of why they last so long. One of the metrics, one of the characterization tools that I've developed that's still in development is that I discovered that the megaliths of Cusco are weakly radioactive, just like the artifacts are. So, in both cases, I attribute that radioactivity to their chemical composition. Other people might say, oh, they're radioactive because the gravity beam or the plasma gun liquefied the stone. And yeah, there's different camps, there's different interpretations. I think when we look at some of the masonry, we can agree there was a phase change. it looks like it was liquid at some point. I think we can all agree on that. Whether you believe it was ancient, lost, high technology, as in the sci-fi theme, maybe. Where's the evidence? Show me the evidence, right? Would love to see that. I personally am seeing much more evidence in the chemical engineering or composition of these monuments. You see this gravitational slumping. You see this behavior of a cast product. So we'll see what the data, you know, tells us, but I don't think I would put this much effort into something that didn't have legs, you know. Trust me, I thought about this far before releasing the information or publishing that hopefully I can just contribute what I can learn, and other people might join in and say, hey, that is a good idea, or you missed this, or that's the scientific process, right? So I appreciate your comment about that because I'm doing all this as a passion for free. I share it because I think it's amazing and I think people would also enjoy it. So, you know, the title or the name tag doesn't really matter. The information is there. And in the most basic sense, I have a thesis. I'm using analytical technologies to find data and reporting the data. You know, from there, everyone, you know, gets their feathers ruffled. But I think it's really nice to, since I've released the information, it's really great that people around the world have really um, expressed positive feedback and said, keep going, this is great. I mean, 95%. I mean, you can always count on 5% of people. They're basically talking to a wall. You know, they're just like commenting something. And it's like, well, I know you didn't read the paper, so I'll let you figure it out, you know?
Yeah, no, that's great. So you detailed some of it in the paper in terms of and you just mentioned, so silica, aluminum, carbon, um, and the radioactivity. But how do you hypothesize that they're actually making them or made them? And but as you mentioned there too, the megaliths in Peru, the chemical composition, and with your analogy of the bread making, may be different from that, that piece that had different tiles. And I don't even understand why. Why would they do that with the different tile piece? There has to be some. So this is the thing. So I've looked at. So I don't want to say I've studied this, but I follow
Yeah.
not just Mike, but whoever the Geo Aliens guy is, and he's posting
Mhm.
all those. I'm obsessed with the story, and even I don't want to get too far off this, but because I want to jump back into the geopolymer chemical composition and actually making these things. But there's got to be a function and a purpose to everything they did, because
Exactly.
right.
Exactly.
So in terms of the tiling that they did on some of those pieces, there's got to be a reason for it. I don't know what it is, but that gets into a different geopolymer recipe for something like that versus
Complex. Complex.
for sure. So how would you hypothesize that, so you have some culture, whatever it may be, whatever genetic lineage it may be,
Sure.
from this world or not, and they say we want to build a megalith in Peru, right? And then they're like, oh, we'll just use our geopolymer technology. How do you hypothesize from start to finish that goes?
Okay. Well, this is very fun. Part of the puzzle, right?
Yeah.
Um, you know, I'm happy to report that I'm one of to my knowledge, the first person who's analyzed the composition of these megaliths in Cusco. So it's kind of like if you gave me a chocolate cake, I could say, you use this many eggs, this much flour, this much sugar to make your cake. So in Peru, remember we're talking about additive manufacturing, a cast concrete. You and me, Mike, we're on the job site. Our boss wants us to build an insane wall. We have to get materials here. There's no Home Depot in sight, there's no Lowe's. How are we going to get these insane megaliths that they want here? You know, dragging them up those mountains is going to suck. It's going to take forever. That whole narrative is really defunct. It's starting to fall apart. With this newer interpretation, concrete is cement, the glue, and the aggregate, the filler. It's that simple. So on site, we need cement or mortar, and we need filler, aggregate, or sand. So the what's critical to differentiate is that even within Cusco, you have different styles of masonry. In the paper, my Peruvian paper, I distinguish them in two groups. There's probably more, but ashlar masonry, which is like a light brown, coffee colored, rectangular style of masonry, the Coricancha style. The other type is the polygonal masonry, which is light gray in composition color, and the form work is just so strange. Each one is one of one. Each one is unique, and they interlock perfectly, right? So um, maybe they reflect different eras of construction. Maybe they reflect different styles of the same people. I think that will become more clear. But if you and me are on the job site and we need to make a wall for our the king, we can mix natural ingredients on site. Many of the components that formulate the cement, the binder, this is where I believe the radioactivity is introduced. It's in the cement, it's in the binder, because these megaliths are more radioactive than natural quarry samples. So they've been enriched, is my case here. They've been enriched through an isotopic concentration because the cement is likely formulated through ash, wood ash, or volcanic ash. Both are great. Both can do the job. With the idea of geopolymers, remember it's a chain, many chains that all link together. The process of forming a geopolymer involves a chemical dissolution. So that ash that we start with, when we mix our chemistry in, everything dissolves. And by the way, ash is purely mineral based, no organics present, or very little if it's well sieved. Though that ash is already very, very, very fine particulates, right? When introducing this chemical environment, they dissolve further into their molecular or atomic building blocks. In this chemistry, in this mortar we're mixing, we've introduced the right amount of certain ingredients, which are in development in our lab, natural ingredients. These natural ingredients kick off an event called polymerization, where all those tiny atomic or molecular components start to form these strings. Now our mortar is getting sticky. So that mortar is what's going to stick it all together. And in terms of aggregate or filler, there's more investigation, more research that's warranted. But my current understanding is that the geologists, the guys who are saying, come on, these come from that quarry. You know how they tell you that? They use a device called an XRF gun, handheld device. You can bring the sensor up to the megalithic wall. It's going to scan and sweep the material and give you a readout and say, look, it's made of XYZ. We take that same gun to the quarries, the ones that they've identified, and it's a match. Look, the XRF says the same ingredients. I agree. It's been reprocessed, meaning the XRF device is picking up the aggregate material that did come from that quarry in buckets, not in 30-ton slabs. Um, there are some other key giveaways there in the compositional analysis that there's an enrichment not only of the isotopes, which is very strange, but enrichment of certain chemicals. Those certain chemicals that are enriched are potassium and sodium, which are these fundamental building blocks to make that mortar, to make that geopolymer cement. So that's my basic understanding is that it's naturally and abundantly harvested. We have the llama caravans, we've got the chemical knowledge. The ancient Andeans were extremely adept in this. I mean, in so many ways. They were producing wood ash and calcined clay at scale in in I kind of avoid the word industrial because it has this modern connotation, but yes, the ancient Peruvians had plenty of material to work with. I think it's certainly within reason that they can um, construct these structures. It's kind of, I like to think of it as sandcastle technology. Um, and you're right, the forms, the shape, the morphology is an artifact of their process, right? It's not, there's a rhyme and a reason to it, right? So the megaliths, and I do believe that this applies to Egypt, to Cambodia, to Stonehenge. We'll learn more as those doors open up, but it's you go around Göbekli Tepe, you go around the world and ancient people had the capacity to construct or erect mega structures without cranes, without buses and trucks and all these things. So I would recommend for the audience to read the book called The Natron Theory. It's a very simple read. It's written by Marcel Foti, who's a friend, and he figured all this stuff out in his backyard. He's again not an academically accredited scientist, but um, he's done some amazing work, and we've recently met, and we're working on some formulas together. And that book is a great perspective shift into seeing how a lot of these structures, they're kind of screaming at you. You can see the casting style when sort of put your geopolymer glasses on. So, um, a very the the exact moment that was my aha moment, that was my breakthrough, was seeing an interview with Marcel where they share a video of the Peruvian megaliths lighting up with a UV light. And at that time, I already was studying these artifacts, knew about them, and from my own investigation, I discovered that they glow with UV light. The artifacts do. So when I saw that megalith glowing with the light, I was like, wait a minute. Why would you be glowing and you be glowing? How does that even make sense? So the word geopolymer is the best word I have for now. Maybe we'll come up with other words because we'll learn, but essentially, yes, an engineered material composition is the through line between the artifacts and the megaliths. Again, kind of threading the needle here. Not all my friends who study the megaliths want to study the artifacts. Not all my artifact friends want to study the megaliths. But there's so much to learn, and that's very exciting. And yeah, these topics have been very stifled, very limited, very um, redundant for a long time. So you may not agree. That's totally fine. You can evaluate the evidence for yourself and come up with your own idea that might convince all of us. So um, Yeah, I don't know if I have like a flag to wave or, like a corporate banner, but like I said in some other interviews, I just like to learn, and that's taken me pretty far. And what would you do if you had ancient alien artifacts under your bed? Forget about them. They kind of they don't leave you alone. They're
Yeah,
they have that effect, whether you're a scientist or archaeologist or what have you, they have an energetic presence that is hard to deny.
definitely. All right, wait. So I'm familiar with the UV and the illumination, the fluorescence or phosphofluorescence. But before going down that rabbit hole, I still want to focus on the geopolymers a bit.
Sure.
So there were megaliths, so there are megaliths where rock was indeed quarried. But I guess you're saying that, and even that is a superhuman task, like however they did it. I've always been in the boat and I couldn't care less what Flint Dibble or any other classically trained archaeologists say that they dug these rocks out with chisels and whatever else and moved 100-ton stones up hills. Get out of here. This is nuts. Right. So, and even you look at like Kailasha Temple, where they dug it out. Like these were civilizations that it had to be easy to do that because, like I said,
Right.
me and my buddies are not going to just sit around and be like, yo, let's dig out hundreds of tons of rock by just chiseling there and giving ourselves a headache from the sound of chiseling. All it had to be easy. But there were indeed quarry sites, and I guess you're saying that XRF for the chemical composition of the rocks from some of those quarry sites are similar or have the same chemical composition for the megaliths, but it's that after quarrying it and then moving it, however they did it, then I don't want to say melted it, but somehow came up with a way to dissolve stone and then put it into a chemical composition in addition to what you mentioned, mixing it with wood ash or volcanic ash, which
Right.
even there, you said like on again, industrial process, this modern word, but how many trees or how much of
Yeah.
volcanic ash do you have to collect in order
Yeah.
to build 100-ton blocks? Like I've seen the pictures of people standing in front of, these pillowy megalithic, just one piece of that.
Right.
It's immensely dwarfing. So like, anyway, so taking the quarried stone, changing the chemical composition so that it includes the same components. How do you think they did that? And even with collecting enough wood ash and volcanic,
Right.
was that even they're burning down trees to get the ash, or maybe that was maybe designed where they know the chemical
Hmm.
composition of wood ash. Why would you burn down trees? That's an inefficient process. Just mix it up in the lab. But then you need the chemical process to extract those chemicals from whatever it is that you're getting, right? So how do you put all of that together from you have the components, individual components, and then you actually are able to have them in the chemical composition to mix them together. And then is
Right.
this a high temperature thing? Is it a low temperature thing? What's the cast? Like,
Right.
is this a stone cast? Is it a metal cast? Is it because where does the casting go after it hard? Like
Right.
I've seen Marcel's um YouTube videos on this where he's making basically the geopolymers in a plastic cup. And after
Yep.
you just drop it out and it becomes very hard and you still have your plastic cup. But what was the mold even that they're using for these giant, and then how do you get enough material? So anyway, how do you,
Yes.
yeah, I got
all of that.
all of
These
it.
are these are really great points because either they're some of the most common points that come up when talking about this avenue or this interpretation of um, their construction methods, right? So, one very interesting or important distinction is that XRF devices are limited in their bandwidth, in their capacity to read the sample material. So, the standard device used by all the hotshot archaeologists and geologists cannot see the cement binder. That cement binder can really only be measured, only be witnessed at the nano scale. You need an SEM. You need a sample. So uh, you can't find what you're not looking for, basically. And on that topic of the logistics, right? Again, you and me, Mike, we're in Peru 5,000 years ago. We got to build this wall. These guys are going to go lift 30-ton blocks. It's going to take them a month to get here. We have a week to finish. What are we going to do? Well, we could mix and cast on site. In our modern day, you visit any construction site around the globe, what do you find? Generally, concrete. Concrete is one of the most consumed materials on the planet. I believe it's maybe even second behind water. Modern concrete, Portland cement, is incredibly cheap. It's incredibly detrimental to our environment. The production of modern cement accounts for 8% of global CO2 emissions. All of aviation and trucking combined is under 5%. So why does it cost so much energy to produce modern cement? We run really, really big coal refineries, mills that calcine the lime. Modern Portland cement is a hydrate, meaning you add water to it. You add too much water, you have soup. You add too little, you have a sandcastle. Not going to work. So you add just the right amount. Geopolymers are not hydrates. They don't drink the water. Water is involved in the mix as a solvent. It helps everybody break down to those fundamental components that eventually restructure. During that process, when a geopolymer is forming, it's called the polycondensation window. It's in a gel state. It's in a Play-Doh state. The rheology, the behavior of the material is not like our modern concrete, which does need formworks and molds because it's a liquid, it's a soup. It can't contain itself. These formulations likely could contain themselves. You see this morphology in some of the masonry that these perfect curvilinear complex joints. Stop hitting your head against the wall. They're that way because they were born that way. They were cast onto each other. They didn't have to measure much. The seams, the fitment, you're right, you can't fit a razor blade through it because it's cast upon each other. So, I think around the world, you brought up Kailasa Temple. I mean, it's a big, I think it's a big body of knowledge that was applied by different people in different environments for different purposes, right? And they achieved different things. I think this interpretation as well does not take away anything from the engineering of the ancients. I think it gives more clarity, it gives more understanding. It's even a bigger wow that it's all engineered and designed. Outside of the material, these sites like Sacsayhuaman, Egypt, Giza, they were surveyed. There's subterranean networks underneath all these places with the same material cast as tunnels. So they didn't just make a wall, they made a citadel with aquifer networks, with drainage channels. I mean, the Peruvians or the Andeans they have hydraulic networks that run through the mountains today. So, in terms of making that happen, sure is a lot easier to have a couple llamas show up with bags of sand, bags of chemistry, and we can mix and make what we need on site. There in the paper, I do cite historical chroniclers who talked about the state-run caravans of llamas. Remember that this area in Cusco is it's like a hub. It's like a meeting point between different branches of their empire. So the trade networks, the capacity to produce these materials, it's all there. It is. It's all there, and I think it's um, I think it's a really important topic in the sense that in an ideal world, we can learn from the ancients. We can learn from our past. So the ancient people made structures, like you said, that have lasted 5,000 years, 10,000 years, 50? I don't know. But our modern infrastructure is crumbling in real time, in front of our eyes. The homes we live in, mold, toxicity, they can burn in 20 minutes. Uh, we should learn from the ancients. We can produce these materials today. There are companies. Europe is way ahead of the US. Asia is way ahead of the US. You know, geopolymers like hardly heard about here in the US, but there are a few companies that are pursuing it. One of the first 3D printed homes, geopolymer homes, is here in Nevada. So that's another angle here that I would like to pursue with friends is developing precast homes, hospitals, shelters. Yeah, our housing, our infrastructure could use some help. So these materials, it's really the whole package. You know, you get to learn about the ancients, see how resourceful and ingenious they were with their world, with their environment, and how we could do better, basically.
Definitely, yeah. So wait, how easy is it? I mean, to using geopolymer technology, I mean, you mentioned some of the ingredients, but like I guess you're gonna try to recreate some of the pieces or even all right, and then as you mentioned, you're building out maybe companies to start offering this, why build your house out of wood and steel or whatever when you can build it out of geopolymers and then, for generations you'll have a house,
Yeah, that's really one of my bigger passions, and there are some companies I'm working with who are well established, have the patents, have the 3D printers. The market, the money is always a funny thing. You know, people want the cheapest, fastest, blah blah blah. You know, we're in a very disposable economy, disposable media, disposable things. So, um, for the right people, it makes sense, and for the right communities, it makes sense. Um, and you know, I live in California, and this place burns like twice a year, and no one is learning. We're putting stick frame homes back up with the drywall and the whole thing again. It's like, guys, this is not it. And the insurance companies it's this whole money thing. So who knows? When in the right, you know, situation, anything's possible. But I really do want to pursue that. And I know that, Buckminster Fuller is a great thinker of our time, and one of his quotes is that you don't fight an old system, you simply build a new system that makes the old one obsolete. Um, yeah, so that, recreating the megaliths is absolutely happening. I'm pursuing that. I know other people who are pursuing that. Because I have samples, I'm developing an evidence-based recipe, and this will serve as more evidence. Probably won't be enough for some people to cast it and make it, but we're gonna go for it. And yeah, those samples that I analyzed, I mentioned their chemical enrichment compared to control being the quarry. I mentioned their radiological or isotopic enrichment. That's strange. One of the elements that is concentrated in the megalithic samples is chlorine or chloride, which is virtually inexistent, non-existent in uh, volcanic or igneous rock. Whether you want to call it diorite or andesite, those are just names of natural compositions. So it's kind of like the blind leading the blind. I know it looks like a rock, but is it really? There are many other characteristics there, but this enrichment in chloride it's impossible in natural formations. It's not possible, but it is possible in this mortar or concrete formulation. Chloride is a useful ingredient in making this 3D structure. Um, so again, the data is suggesting that it's of an engineered composition. And I'm really happy that, I'm doing this independently, right? So give me grace, but more people have reached out and offered their expertise, offered their laboratories. So more research is being done, which is great. And yeah, the radioactivity is being taken on by some nuclear physicists, friends of mine who have really good equipment. So yeah, greater resolution data, more understanding is unfolding, and this is something that I've developed. We'll see if it holds weight over years to come. This radiological signature, and what is very interesting is that certain geological outcrops or volcanic deposits have fingerprints. They have their own blend of isotopes. So we might be able to pinpoint exactly where these ingredients are coming from, like geospatially, just like uh, forensically, basically. So casting the megaliths is a fun project that is underway. I was just with Marcel Foti in Budapest. We were casting megaliths in his backyard and having fun and cooking granite at campfire temperatures. So, there's just more to learn. And the artifacts, it is possible that you could recreate them, but these things are so complex and so strange. It'll be a good attempt. You might be able to get the material right, but the shape, the engravings, the inlays, that's another task or challenge. And um, you know, these formulations, these compositions of the artifacts, they're just so unique and they're so strange that it's very unlikely that people are in their garages doing this. Something that also needs to be said is these are being sold on eBay. That doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean they're real or they're fake. It's just the way of the world. The Egyptian vase show and all the hoopla around the Egyptian vases, those are on eBay. They used to be on eBay for $300. Now they're $30,000. So, some of the researchers who got involved, like Mike and others, how do you think they got their first pieces? eBay. And eventually, some of these people do go to Mexico, where these are coming from. And again, it's a very complex situation. The area where these come from is incredibly dangerous, incredibly remote. You would never, ever want to be there for any other reason than looking for ancient alien artifacts. There's no reason to. But I've been, others have been, and it gets to a point where it's just fucking undeniable. Something is here, whether you think it's a big, big, big hoax or a big, big, big discovery, something big is here. And yeah, my friends and I have done our best to provide meaningful interpretations, meaningful data, because you can get so lost in this topic and people buy them and then now they're the chosen one or whatever, right? There's a lot of people in this world with a lot of interpretation. So this is my interpretation that these artifacts are genuine. They are vestiges of a lost material culture of prehistory. And I invite people to consider that idea. And in other podcasts and other interviews, I've also shared that this is not the only collection. Maybe it is fake and I'll pack up and go home. But what about all the other ones? Tula, Guerrero, Peru, Japan. It's unfortunate that these don't see the light of day, but that's what I'm doing is sort of giving them a stage, giving them a platform. It's not even about me. It's about these artifacts. And I really like seeing people light up. There's that's worth more than any accolade or whatever. The connection with people and seeing them, the wonder and the spark come back and go, what even is this? How could this be real? So it's fun, and it's challenging at times, but it's great to have new support. I'm grateful for you and your audience. And these artifacts are currently understood to be fake. Come on, they're fake, right? I think they're real. You can think whatever you want. So because they're fake, there's no jurisdiction. That's how they got out of Mexico. That's how they get around the world because they're like orphans. They're abandoned. No one wants them. No one can claim them. So I don't know what people think, who's going to be, what is it, Bill Nye the Science Guy is going to come and stamp and say, oh, boom, they're real. You can believe me. You come to your own conclusions, right? I've brought these around the world to historians, archaeologists, material scientists in private. They're absolutely blown away, can't even think. In public, they'd rather not acknowledge that they've ever seen them or talk about them. So for me, I'm able to just go for it because I don't know. I don't have a lifelong career or tenured job to risk. And I'm in it for the right reasons. And with that being said, my friends and there are other people working on this project. I can't control what they produce or how they interact with what they do. But what I can say is that my close friends who I work with regularly, we have been cooking up ideas to bring these artifacts to the people in gallery pop-ups, museum events. Ultimately, they belong in a museum. Ask anybody who touches these. That's what we all want. That day will come. Until then, we look forward to sharing them with people and doing events and connecting. And the audience can follow my page and the pages surrounding my page. Too many to name, but those events are on their way. And if you want to check them out, if you want to learn more, there's some digital media, there's some online content, but in the physical is really where you connect, you experience them more deeply.
All right, wait. So before jumping into the alien pieces, I still want to focus a little bit on the megaliths. So interestingly, and I had the thought, at one point civilizations were digging out stone from mountains, whether to live, you can see that there are some of the mountains in India where they've carved out, and it looks
Right.
like an apartment complex, right? So they were living in the mountains. And granted, even that, as I mentioned, and it's a Herculean task to dig out mountain. I mean, I see some guy on YouTube doing it, and he's drilling, like, did they have drills back then? I don't know. But so on the one hand, you've got, and then as we talked about, the Kailasha temple where they literally dug that mountain out. I doubt that's geopolymer because literally you see it's dug out of a mountain.
Well, let me help you understand it or give you a new perspective if you'd
Yeah.
like. The work of Marcel Foti is currently being investigated or attempting to be reproduced through university groups. I'm involved in one of those groups. Marcel's theory is that basic chemistry, natural chemistry, can be applied to geological formations with a small amount of heat. We can dissolve and deconstruct the material in minutes.
Stone. So you're saying
Um,
stone, rock, mountain. Yeah.
right. So, what got Marcel on this journey many years ago are the famous scoop marks in Egypt. They're also present in India and Peru. Kind of where you find the megaliths, you see these like scoop marks out of the rock. So it looks like ice cream. Looks like it was soft, right? So, hey, maybe it was a plasma gun. We don't know. But another possibility is this chemical dissolution. So, in terms of Kailasa, in terms of Petra in Jordan, it's considered that it's generally accepted that they chiseled out Kailasa perfectly and made not one mistake somehow in the whole temple, right? These are sort of the distinctions or delineations that are important to recognize is that in theory, if they have the technology to dissolve or deconstruct the stone, right? They have this, it's the same body of knowledge to reconstruct the stone. Okay. You can do it any way you like. But for Kailasa or these sites, the idea is that material was extracted, now in a decomposed form. Then this job site, right, was prepped, was worked to build the temple. I believe that the temple was built ground up as one material. You
Okay.
can,
So they dissolved everything in that area and then built it up from there as opposed to.
like a sand cat, instead of top down, bottom up. It's that fundamental shift from reductive manufacturing to additive manufacturing, and it introduces a couple new steps. You know, you got to remove and clear the space, but now you have all that material to recreate. By the way, that temple is impossibly complex. I mean, I can't even explain the detail to the audience. You might have to plug in photos, but they're held by elephants that have jewelry, that have flowers, that it's insane, especially in the context of percussive carving, right? It's nonsensical. Now in sculpting, like clay or sandcastles, it's definitely achievable. And these people likely had a mastery of this material. They know the window of that polycondensation. So with a fucking stick, you could make a figure. Obviously, it's much more nice than that crude representation, but um, that's my personal belief. I don't currently align with megawatt lasers shooting from outer space or gravity beams from, I don't know. I don't, I will admit that over when I worked with Nassim and all those years, yes, I did subscribe to most of that thinking. Hey, we can't do it, so it must have been something outside of our comprehension, something that we can't think about. I think this interpretation brings it back down to earth. It's like it's very doable. There's a chemical pathway that's been proven to show that these materials can be formulated. And interestingly, my research focus currently is in Cusco because it's such a hot spot. There's megaliths everywhere. Um, Hope to travel more and learn more, but in Cusco, you have this strange occurrence with the nubs, the protrusions lighting up. Not only that, when you look at the structures, when you look at the megaliths, you got 300 perfect blocks, and you've got 8 in a row that are fucked up. How? What happened? Right? So the idea there is that these are batch mixed. You and 3 guys are mixing, me and 3 guys are casting. There's a troweling team, something of that nature. So many of the blocks are perfect, but you'll see in sequence or in a grouping, you'll see these ones that have these protrusions. So the interpretation we have is that the mix is off, the mix is improper. Remember, I said that geopolymers use water as a solvent, and as the geopolymer forms and becomes rigid, the water is exuded, it's pushed out. It looks like the stone is sweating. Water gets pushed out, pushed out. Because if the water doesn't leave, it's never going to cure, it's never going to get solid. So, with that interpretation, these protrusions, these nubs, they always occur at the bottom layer, the bottom level of this each block, which logically follows the pathway of water. The idea is that they're exhaust ports for excess water. So water naturally drains to the lowest point. Whatever technique or process was used to allow the material it needed to drain away from the block under it, right? It had to get outside of it. So whether that was held with a sieve or a bag or simply sculpted into form, that's the idea there. And man, those videos that I've shared I've done it. There's one in particular, one protrusion that lights up very strongly, but all of them have this UV fluorescence, this reaction. So it's a pattern. It's not a fluke. The lovely community of Twitter has already chopped it up and said he painted that on there, or it's like they come up with some amazing things. Anything but the truth, right? It's like that's there. The light gives us this new opportunity to see what we haven't seen before. The idea of this reaction, in my interpretation, and what's detailed in the paper, is that it's a localized microstructure under the nub. It only lights up right there, not on the side, not on the front, right there. So likely when water was draining, it created a concentration effect right there in that localized area. As that material cures, finally hardens, you have this distinct microstructure or localized concentration that reacts strongly to the UV light. I would call that a smoking gun. That's how I see it.
Wait, so I think, and I still have more questions on a separate tangent, but the UV fluorescence, phosphofluorescence, I think you mentioned in the pieces it's because of carbon quantum dots, but is
Yes,
that also in the geopolymers in Peru where there's carbon in those megalithic structures that's a reason for the UV illumination?
it's very possible. Um, Both materials have carbon inside. In the megalithic samples, it's an anomalous amount, way too much than should be in natural stone. That's really the best interpretation I have with the artifacts currently. The most basic understanding is it's an optical effect due to their microstructure. And really the trace elements present, the trace elements being the ones that react to the light. So the SEM actually does have some limitations with parts per billion. It actually can't pick up on every single possible component. So strontium, uranium, uranium is something I measured through gamma spectroscopy, but I could not measure through SEM. So it's possible that I'm wrong about carbon quantum dots, but that could, in the case of the artifacts, I can see how that would be likely or possible because when I looked at the materials under SEM at the nano scale, you see nanoparticulate dispersion of organic carbon, which is the definition of a carbon quantum dot, is these particles at this very, very small scale that interact with the light. With the artifacts, I also did testing with a different bandwidth of UV that reacts with a different color. So that's the best evidence I have so far in terms of the carbon quantum dots. There's some really fancy equipment that I hope to use soon that can really measure this more definitively. That's my best guess for now. And the megaliths, it's definitely possible that the carbon quantum dot effect is there. Maybe it's more, it's kind of apples to oranges. They're just not the same, but they're related. Um, but the the effect underneath the nubs is fluorescence. When I hit it with the light, it shines. When I take it away, it doesn't shine. By a stroke of luck, when I was in Cusco, I was given access to visit the Sacsayhuaman site from 8 p.m. to 2 a.m. alone. I had two archaeologists with me who guided me, but it was just us. And I had my UV light with me. So those the structures at Sacsayhuaman, they have a phosphorescence, a trail of green light. As the light passes over the surface, it leaves this delayed reaction. So that's phosphorescence. They're both indicative of an optical effect in the microstructure. That light green pathway is so faint. My iPhone, I couldn't get a video of that. So you'll have to take my word for that. But I will return and we'll do some more. Um, so there's the phosphorescence, the fluorescence, and then this sounds like a riddle or something, but there's efflorescence, which is something I detail in the Peruvian paper. Efflorescence being a mineral bloom. Efflorescence is a deposit on the surface of materials, porous materials, microporous materials. So modern concrete, modern cement is very susceptible to this behavior. It's a leaching of minerals. Um, the Coricancha Temple, in my paper, this is a very strong piece of evidence that Joseph Davidovits and others have said, how has no one else seen this? There are massive blooms of salt deposits on the Coricancha walls. In the paper, I explained this mineral leaching in the context of local pollution, increase in rain acidification. Meaning I have friends who've lived in Cusco for 20 plus years and they said this didn't used to be here, these big blooms. It's kind of new. And Cusco is a big basin. And unfortunately, with modern industrial pollution and the local environment, the rain acidification has been measured to be detrimental to the environment. So Cusco has a big rainy season. So these megaliths are basically like big sponges that soak up this rain, this acidic rain, and over 10 years or more, these blooms have really now that you see them, you can't miss them. But it's so funny because it seems like no one else has noticed them. I joke and say I hope they don't power wash them away because um, they're there, and there's this particular doorway outside of the Coricancha that has a big bloom underneath one of the lentil blocks that, with the UV light, lights up very well at night. So, you know, other people have, tried to chop it down and say, hey, look, I found this stone in New Zealand that has efflorescence. I said, hey, great. We're in Cusco. I understand that geological formations can have this behavior. But again, we're doing apples to oranges. I'm talking about these megaliths right here in Cusco. You're talking about a geological formation on the other side of the planet. Hey, that's great. But um, the evidence to support that they are of a cast concrete is there if you want to see it.
All right, wait, before going down the UV road, because I think that's super interesting, and I think it was intentional. But before going there, so where I was going with the digging apartment complexes out of mountains, which clearly, right, that happened, whether they were living there or not. But I wonder which came first. I wonder if there were ancient civilizations that were, now that I think about the ability of to dissolve stone. I wonder if that's maybe what they did. So it's like which came first, right? Because when you look at some of these dug out of the mountain apartment complex looking structures, if you don't know that a geopolymer technology could exist where you can literally dissolve stone and reformulate it however you like, well, maybe that came first, and then you're dissolving stone out of mountains to live in the mountains, or did the older civilization somehow dig stone out of mountains, and then a group of them got together and was like, F this, we're spending all day chiseling mountain to live in there. Let's try to figure out a better way to do this. And then, so it's like, there's got to be an evolution to this process if it originated on Earth, right? So what do you think? Which came first, the geopolymer technology, or, were people digging, out of mountains first, and then they were like, let's jump to the geopolymer. You know what I mean there? So which may have come first?
Yeah, I think this has some parallels to the very common uh, idea or narrative around that older structures are better and more advanced. That's something you hear a lot in the megalithic community. The older ones are bigger, better, than our newer ones suck. So like the opposite of what we're told in school, right? The linear progression. It's actually the alternative thinkers, the megalithic crowd is more on the idea that we've devolved. We had a higher technology, we had the capacity to do these things, and it got worse and worse. Um, that is very understandable in a world of cataclysms and magnetic pole shifts, and even the idea of Roman concrete, right, is something that we forgot for a long time and have recently rediscovered. All those structures, by the way, in Rome are going to outlast Manhattan. They're going to outlast Chicago because there's no rebar. They are engineered and designed to stand the test of time. Our stuff, not so much. So, in terms of who came first or what came first, I do believe that the capacity to observe nature, the capacity to relate to your ancestors who you were living amongst, the wisdom was kept, the wisdom was passed down. I do believe in global civilizations before the last ice age. I personally do. So perhaps this was more readily used in those times, and was forgotten after cataclysms and maybe resurfaced here and there with the survivors. That's possible. Um, again, I think that the entire consciousness, the entire framework of reductive manufacturing is gonna become archaic pretty soon with these conversations happening more and more because we can't do it. Even if you get a Milwaukee drill or whatever, it's nonsensical. It's too labor intensive. It's too energy intensive. And for what? Some dugouts in the mountain? There has to be the juice has got to be worth the squeeze kind of thing. I mean, that's the basic human element to all of this is there was a reason that they made these structures in the mountains. Like, I think it's Cappadocia in Turkey, amongst other places. So, yeah, the subterranean world of the ancients is was very natural for them, you know. Peru, amongst other places like Egypt, I believe Cambodia too, they have these deep subterranean networks interconnecting the whole place. So, you know, the physical labor and the intensive energy required to percussively carve or break down stone, maybe they had a lot of time and a lot of, again, here we go again, copper chisels, even if they had steel, it's still a tough job. Whereas the when you work with power tools, they say let the tool do the work. So yeah, if some clever dude, maybe his name was Merlin, had an idea to dissolve and reconstruct stone, it revolutionizes the process. And it's possible. Remember that certain geological formations are much easier to dissolve than others based on their composition. So maybe some of the sandstone stuff was like a breeze. Maybe some wasn't as easy. But I think that it is a global lost technology. I think that it fits that description in every possible way. It has been shunned, it has been cast away. A lot of people hear about geopolymers and turn away, but there's a lot of momentum, there's a lot of research happening, so we'll see what unfolds. But again, all of these concepts and narratives for the last 20, 30, 50 plus years have gone nowhere, and everyone's still arguing about it and pointing fingers. Whereas there are some clever people like Marcel who have trailblazed. These people are pioneers. Hats off to Marcel. Hats off to the Davidovits family. I mean, the amount of it's not just the research; it's the crowd dealing with so many people who, unfortunately, just feel the need to project negativity on a topic that is just like it's a science project. It's not a end all be all, but there's human nature behind all that. And yeah, I think in the ancient context, it fits the bill. Lost global technology. It's applicable in Turkey, Egypt, Peru. I do believe that it comes from a deeper era, maybe because the materials, the megaliths, are man-made or concrete that have been shown to have organic chemistry. It's possible that we could date the megaliths, right? You can't date stone. We don't know when they built it. Shut up. It's like we might figure it out. It's true that you can't date stone, but these formulations of man-made stone certainly can be dated. So, you know, I don't even know. Maybe it is 5,000 years old. Maybe it's 55,000 years old. But I think the body of wisdom, the body of knowledge goes way, way back. I think it ties into the idea of alchemy. I did mention briefly Merlin, the idea of the sword in the stone, which, again, when you put your geopolymer glasses on, you know, that sword in the stone, it's just one big magic trick. Everyone, you cannot pull that sword out of that stone. It's stuck. But
So,
is it stone?
well, it's geopolymer. So to that point about so UV, I think it was intentional. So if you, especially if you've got carbon quantum dots or something that is excited by UV light, so you're exciting the photons because the UV is doing that job.
Right.
So the pieces are going to be in the sun all day, whether it's a megalithic wall or the alien artifacts. And then when the sun sets, I was going to say when the lights go out, all these pieces should illuminate because they have they've been constructed so that they emit the photon of light because the UV excited them. Now, that technology exists now, but the fluorescence lifetime is very short. It's like 2 seconds. If you hit something with the UV, like you see it, you've got to hit. So to me, it suggests that um, maybe if it is carbon, maybe that carbon decayed over time, just like you've got a carbon-14 date, the isotope decayed over time where it can't hold that fluorescence, and that because you do see it when you wave the UV, it's not strong though. But I wonder
Mhm.
if when the pieces were constructed, that they glowed like light bulbs in the dark everywhere. Especially imagine this illuminated megalithic structure on its own without lights. I mean, when you think about the advancement of technology, not just housing, I mean, lights and the street lights and everything else. If you could come up with the technology to illuminate based on sunlight during the day and during the night, it's literally,
Yeah.
I hate to say it because it sounds, woo. And I know Nassim, the 0 point, people hear 0 point energy, they think woo. But the fact is that you've got light at night. This is literally, I don't want to say 0 point energy, but you've used the chemistry to have lights without a power source. Well, the sun, right? So I think the UV effect may be intentional. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, it's very possible. At the most basic level, it's an optical effect that's not present in dense natural rock. So it's one more of those characteristics to say this is different. It's reacting to this light differently than natural stones do. Um, you know, I think this idea that you shared is very possible, and the the bigger understanding, the bigger realization is that these ancient people were brilliant. They were not savages. They were not dunces. They knew possibly more than we know, or know things in different avenues or different departments. So, you know, how they engineer the materials for what purposes is very much applicable to their life and their experience. So, um, you know, I think in Egypt, there's the work of Jeffrey Drum with Land of Chem. And in my estimation, his theories, his formulas are the most sound in that regard, you know, meaning those structures, whether it was quarried material or cast material, the entire global architecture was designed for a purpose, not a candlelight ritual purpose, a purpose, a functional industrial, some capacity to produce chemistry, like Jeffrey has talked about. Others have talked about the capacity to produce energy, which is not far off. Those materials, I think, in this context of them being engineered, I think it gives that idea even more merit. Because when we make microchips, when we make high technologies, everything is very refined. Everything is very um, engineered. So these mega structures, people talk about the piezoelectric effect in the material. So yes, the energetic qualities, the optical qualities very much may be. This is part of that bigger puzzle, right? I mean, sure, it's not even how they did it, how they moved them, how they lifted them, how they carved them, how they constructed it, but why, right? And I think the engineered composition brings a juicier layer to that because they're engineering, I don't know, 100-ton slabs on top of 30 tons. I mean, you're building something that is has capacitance. The it has the functions in the design to produce something. You know, maybe it's out of commission. Um, so other sites may have other purposes. Kailasa Temple, for example, or but I think in terms of Giza, those pyramids, there's a lot of merit to the idea that they are engineered to be a form of technology. It's that simple. And Joseph Davidovich, who's the forefather of geopolymer science, he's been championing not exactly everything I've said, but he's been championing the idea of engineered composition for decades and decades. And his access to pyramid samples in, I believe, the early 80s is what catalyzed some of his research when he found human hair and air bubbles inside of the casing stones of the pyramid, which should not be in natural limestone.
What was the hair? Has anybody carbon dated that hair?
I don't think so. Um, I don't. I know that his work stirred some controversy over the years, and unfortunately, these academic or corporate institutions have a really, good track record of ousting people and banning them from doing research. So, for what reasons and what motivation, I don't really know. Joseph's a great guy. He's stayed on it, and he's made a huge impact. So, I think that's all that matters. And, carbon dating the megaliths is something that is brand new on the scene. No one's even talking about this because it's not even conceivably possible. But my research, as well as Joseph's, has demonstrated entombed organic material, entombed microorganisms, entombed organic chemistry. So it's really not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So I'm happy to report that those tests are underway. Hopefully, by the end of this year, we might have some of those results. And you can imagine that just swings open a whole new door because it's just new territory, new scientific understandings, and boy, does it answer a lot of questions. We've been toying with these ideas for so long, and a lot of the narratives have strengths and some have weaknesses, and maybe this one is not perfect, but in my estimation, it's got the most merit. I have yet to find physical, tangible evidence of plasma guns and gravity beams. But if I did, I would tell you, Mike. I would tell you.
So let's jump into. I didn't expect to spend so long on the megaliths, but so the pieces, right? So can you bring up that last one, the one that had no, not that one, the circular one, because I hadn't
Yeah.
seen the back of that. I hadn't seen that one before, and this is where people are going to be like, "This is crazy," and for many people, I think it's ontological shock. So wait, yeah. So hey, wait, can you hold that back up again?
Yes, the ontological shock should be studied in its own value because that's a real world effect that these
Yeah.
have on people.
For many people, because they hold on to their beliefs, and some people, all right, wait, not that one, but if you can go back to the one where the pregnant, I think, alien, oh, it's on the back there. All right. Why is she, so basically she's showing us that's what her baby's going to look like, I guess.
Well, it's art, so it's open for interpretation, but you can see how I play with the light and you see different aspects of it. These carvings are tiny,
Yeah.
tiny, tiny. So, yeah, from her navel or from her pregnant stomach, you see this being coming out who doesn't look very human. You know, she looks more human. But essentially, it's tied into the idea of the
Mm.
hybridization of our species.
Yeah.
And this type of evidence, you know, it's not really vague. It's pretty, there are humans and ETs having babies amongst many, many other interesting depictions on these artifacts. So, you know, again, maybe my interpretation's off, but sure looks like ET contact to me.
All right,
Uh,
wait. If you go, that's actually the one I wanted to see. But if you can go back real quick, can you pull up the other one again, the
the
circular stuff?
baby.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
baby. Yeah. So what's interesting is that that ET or whatever it is, no, the other side. I want to get there too, but the other side. So when you think about a highly technological, advanced civilization, the last thing I would expect is vanity. But yet they've got these ornate, like headpieces and all kinds of other costume jewelry, right? And even I know others have mentioned this, but the drilled hole, it's like they were wearing pendants. They were
Yeah.
so to me, it's like surprising that you've got this advanced civilization or whatever they were, right? That is also has some vanity aspect where they're putting on these ornate costumes. And maybe that's one reason why the Inca are replicating that, from their ancestors, right? Or whatever they were, right? So I don't know. Wait. So then also going back to that, so the Olmec, I'm sure you've seen like the jade figurines of that.
Exactly.
I hadn't seen this either. And this is crazy because I didn't know that there was a connection to the Olmec in these pieces. And that might be what's the serpent called that they call it? What is it?
Quetzalcoatl.
Yes. Um, so where was I going with the Olmec story? Ah,
The language or the
not the language is interesting too, but the jade figurines that the Olmec jade figurines, they all have moderately enlarged skulls, not super cone head, but kind of in the middle, which almost look like that baby that you just showed on
right,
the yeah, which now so this is I thought about this and I don't know, this all speculation. Who knows what the truth is, but obviously, I think that the reason those pieces exist, that they were created whenever, was this is the story. We know you're going to find that this is the story, and this is how it is. This is right. So, I wonder, so maybe the Olmec or whatever those figurines were are the hybrids of human alien. Now that you could even do that, like I think a donkey or a mule, one of them is infertile because of
right,
the right. So the species aren't genetically so similar that then the baby is can't reproduce, right? So
right.
or if it makes you wonder about cryptoterrestrial, where maybe this quote unquote alien is indeed of a human lineage.
Right.
We're able to now. I've seen some of Michael's pieces where there is indeed an alien having sex with a woman. Like, so if they're genetically different species, you wouldn't be able to do that and have viable offspring, right? Now, the other side of that is because this might be a super advanced civilization, human or otherwise, or human lineage, or off-world. Clearly, they could alter DNA. DNA is all over these pieces. So if they wanted to genetically engineer it and have the baby be carried by a human, okay, now you've got the hybrid, right? But and then just as a last thought before, uh, so when you see like I don't know the names. I always get the names Horus and Anubis, whatever these anthropomorphic deities, the dog head and horse head. These are quote unquote myths. And I know some people think of me as a hardcore scientist, and I am. Like, and that I would even be saying things that sound so crazy, like this shit is crazy to say it. But I don't think these things, and I'm not a religious guy at all. I'm as hardcore agnostic as it gets. Like I'm a scientist. Show me the data, and then let's see, right? So I don't think these are mythologies. Like if you've got this highly advanced civilization, they may have been tinkering with all of the species. And the Anubis or Horus or whichever these anthropomorphic beings are, these may have been their quote unquote perfect creations that were able to survive the test of time where the rest of their creations died out. And
Mhm.
that's why they're so revered. Or they are a part of their culture or whatever it may be. But anyway, what do you think? I hit you with a lot there, but there's a lot going on.
Well, I agree. Generally speaking, I mean, the the genetic engineering of our species, I believe, is the genesis of our species, personally. Um, and the context that the audience might find helpful with these artifacts is not uh, Aztec or Olmec, but Atlantean, meaning the mother culture before Egypt, before Olmecs, before what we consider to be the emergence of civilization. I personally believe that there were civilizations before, such as Atlantis. These artifacts are known as the Aztlan artifacts. Aztlan being the correlation, the Mesoamerican correlation to the concept of Atlantis. So these are literally known by the locals as the Atlantean artifacts. So the genetic part of the story of Atlantis is that their technological advancement had superseded their spiritual advancement in a way where they were living and interacting with the world in a very imbalanced, improper way, which ultimately may have led to their untimely demise. So, part of that ancient understanding is this genetic breeding. And it's very interesting that most of our domesticated animals, such as sheep, pigs, cows, amongst others, those forms of domestication happened in the Holocene. They happened in antiquity. And we haven't done much of that recently. I think our modern genetics is getting quite advanced and our the possibilities are pretty much endless. But it you brought up the hybridization of certain animals like mule and donkeys or big cats like tigers and lions, and how their offspring is not genetically viable. Their offspring cannot reproduce. So, in the context of extraterrestrials or cryptoterrestrials, the fact that or the art depictions show that there's genetic interbreeding, that there's genetic exchange. The idea there is that we're genetically similar enough to make it work. Therefore, we really aren't that distant after all, right? That's kind of the bigger takeaway is that um, we are aliens. we we are partially alien, and I think that there are different blends and different lineages, but yes, the mythological characters generally, we describe them as mythological characters. They may or may not have been historical figures. Um, and in the context of these interbred species with greater lifespans than our own, possibly greater stature than our own, certainly different genetic constitutions, something that I haven't talked about a lot in other podcasts is that when I worked with Nassim at his laboratory, we also did a study on the Paracas elongated skulls of Peru. There's not three of them, not five of them. There's thousands of these really strange biological specimens, not hoaxed. You can drop your guard. These are real specimens of the Peruvian coastline that are just so strange. Our research showed that they did have um, genetic markers tying them back to the area of Turkey and the Black Sea, a European base,
And
very
red hair, red
red
hair.
hair, red hair. Their bone structure is different than our bone structure. Their dental structure is different. Of course, their cranial capacity is different. But this was a living, breathing population that truly existed. And head binding cannot account for the anatomical disparity between us and them. Head binding may account for the emulation of these people. I want to be like them. I'm a royal. So our global history is far more mysterious, far more complex than we have been told. And I think that the genetic component is one of those. Um, it's like a message written in our genes, if that makes sense. That aspect of our existence is something we overlook. We don't put as much effort or time into as other topics, but of course, there are theological implications, there are political implications. The whole thing starts unraveling. The academic, maybe we don't know everything. Maybe it's like uh, that's, I think, the greater experience of disclosure is the old systems cannot sustain where we're going. So this revelation, this understanding has many facets, has many eras, probably. And the human story is probably far more interesting and complex than we've given it credit. And we're living in an exciting time too, to have the ability to communicate like we are and share these ideas with people. So maybe it's like exponential, kind of feels like that. Last 5, 10 years, it's like, you know, these topics get more and more interest and more solutions are coming to light. So we'll learn together.
So the other interesting thing is, if they were quote unquote alien coming from somewhere else, uh, Earth has, so the oxygen concentration in the atmosphere is about 20%. That's how we quote unquote evolved, right? So, if we go to another planet that doesn't have 20% oxygen and say it's 5% oxygen, we're going to be oxygen starved and probably die from not getting enough oxygen or, so that assumes that we couldn't upregulate, but that's a far disparity, 5 versus 20%. So
Yeah.
for alien species to come to Earth and be able to breathe our air
Hmm.
suggests that they would have to come from a similar planet that had a similar atmospheric oxygen concentration. So that's one, which I don't know how likely that is. Granted, billions and
Yeah.
trillions of stars in the universe, probably you're going to have some probability of that, right? But that's one. Two is that would argue against maybe they did originate from here. And, Earth is, I don't know, 5 billion years old or however, in that ballpark. But to think that we're the first iteration of the Matrix. Maybe this is the sixth iteration and civilizations have risen and fallen and they're one that survived for millions of years. I don't know. The second is that the microbiome, the Earth has a specific microbiome. We have
Hmm.
microbiomes on our skin, in our mouth, in our gut, everywhere. So if an alien species came to Earth and they're not genetically, and they haven't evolved here, and their genetics don't have, maybe they came from a sterile planet that has no microbes. I mean, Earth is basically a microbial planet, where we're living in their world, not the other way around. I mean, there's
Right.
something like 10 to the 36 viruses that exist. I mean, we're in the billions. The fact it's 6 orders of magnitude more virus than people on Earth. So
Hmm.
for an alien species to come to Earth and survive that microbiome, not just virus, but fungi, bacteria, et cetera. Now, granted, maybe they're so technologically advanced that they could, snip X, Y, Z, and now they survive on Earth. But this seems like way more work than maybe there's that advanced civilization here. and maybe they evolved big heads, and maybe they, evolved in a low light, low light areas. So now their eyes are black, so they can pick up more light and see more of this, the EMF, the electromagnetic spectrum. So to me, that argues against them coming from somewhere else. The oxygen concentration and the microbiome and adapting. So to me, it's crypto-terrestrial, but I don't know. What do you think?
It's funny because my paper mentions extraterrestrial, which is much more commonly understood. And after releasing the paper, it's still in peer review, so I might still have a shot. But crypto terrestrial definitely is a great fit, I would say. And not that not that it's an either or. Maybe it is both. Um, but the artificial insemination and I think it's to that concept of them coming here and wanting to, for whatever reason, interact with us or um, cohabit with us. This genetic lineage, this genetic exchange is one of those forms. You know, like this woman, I'm holding this in my hand. We could interpret this in a sense as a physical birth, right? But in another sense, it has this spiritual consciousness. Maybe this being is incarnating. Maybe it can exist in our realm without coming through that portal, right? So, yeah, you can see how this topic gets very nuanced and has a lot of open-ended questions, but these materials offer evidence. Take it or leave it, there's evidence. So, a lot of people who've reached out to me since the release of my research and podcast, one of the biggest questions is about the written language and the hieroglyphs. And that's basically everyone's number one question. Like, you're doing a great job, keep it up, but how has no one decoded this yet? And that is another effort that needs to be undertaken with modern AI systems and language learning models. It might be much easier. I personally believe that those tools might help us, but I think that these are designed to be experienced, to be read, to be interacted with. This particular piece has a UFO. It has the Egyptian god Set, and you can see by my fingers here, very small, very tiny hieroglyphs. So, yes, my friends of mine and some nonprofit groups have been forming to help gather resources and gather funding. I'm personally paying for most of this research, so got no t-shirts to sell, got no books to sell at the moment. It's just for the love of science and learning. But more support is always welcome. It really helps make the world go round. So those hieroglyphs, everything is there. We have all the photos, we have all the materials, we have the collections. It would be a small undertaking, but absolutely worth our time and effort. And basically, the focus of my research on the artifacts has been very much based on first principles. What is it? What is it made of? Is it old? Is it genuine? In my estimation, they are genuine, they are old, and of a very complex material composition. So, with that good foundation, we can go to the next step, because most people would say, you're wasting your time, you're studying chicken scratch drawings. Again, these people have never seen them, held them, studied them. So I have to give them grace. They're coming from their level of understanding, and I'm doing my best to share these crazy artifacts that, I don't know. I'm learning like you guys are learning. So that's part of the fun. And um, it's great to connect with you and explore more. I mean, Mike has his own interpretations. Other people have their other interpretations. Um, it's a big puzzle. Interestingly, the Boogosphere is like tangentially related. Some of these artifacts show the same type of writing, the same type of symbols. So it's interesting. I don't know until I learn more. But I'm grateful for all the support and all the positive feedback from people. And, I know that people around the world are dying to learn about this stuff. I would be if I wasn't in my position. So I'm just glad to be a voice, someone who can share these ideas. And I encourage others to contribute where they can, whether it's relative to the artifacts or not. Maybe there's a topic or subject that really lights you up, and that's important for you to figure that one out because obviously there's something there for you, or you wouldn't be interested, right? So, as much as it's fun to learn about all the nitty-gritty science, it's really like a personal journey. It's like a spiritual journey because it's not just measuring and testing, it's communicating, it's connecting, it's seeing what others haven't seen. So there's a lot out there in the world that could use fresh eyes, could use new eyes. And even the Olmecs, we touched upon it briefly, but I would love to spend some time down there. Now a lot of collectors and researchers are saying, come to my collection, come visit me, help me. So that would be very fun. But in the most basic sense, those big colossal heads, they got to be concrete. They got to be. They have all the
Geopolymer.
yeah,
Geopolymer.
geopolymer concrete. They have all the key structural and surface texture. They have all the key giveaways of a material that is not natural. But you can only see that once you've, you know, chewed on this for a little bit. Otherwise, you're still sitting there scratching your head going, how did they lift it? How did they carve it? We'll never know.
Casting it. That's the biggest thing is how do you cast some, and then where is the, what's the, even the cast made of in that case? And then
Well,
where's the
remember that these materials have a rheology, they have a workability that's like wet clay. They cure in stages, so you could cast that whole block bare naked, no form. From there, in the next hour, you have about 1 hour to do the sculpture, and after about an hour, you better be done because it's going to cure. And I'm sure over generations of time and again, human technique and ingenuity, certain artisans, certain sculptors probably just off the charts, like a Da Vinci, like and some of the art pieces of the Mesoamerican world are insane. They're insane. Even, the Temple of the Sun, I'm sorry, the Sunstone, Sunstone in Mexico City, the big calendar. The more you look at these artifacts, the more you look at their material, you see how homogenous they are. For me, that was one of those big moments of like, oh, it's like one glob. There are no veins running through the statues. There are no pockets or inclusions of natural geology. It's made of the same ingredients as rocks, but in a man-made process. So, whether it's the Olmec heads or the Egyptian statues, you have this brilliant material composition that I think will become more um, of focus in the coming years. You kind of can't get around it.
Yeah, definitely. All right, wait. So a couple more questions. I can go on for hours with you, but I got to eat and everything else. But
Yeah.
uh, wait, so I'm sure you've put the petroglyphs or hieroglyphs or whatever you want to call them, the carvings into LLM/AI, and what do they come up with? Has a story
Well,
potential?
if I were to personally lead that endeavor, we need to catalog and survey all of the glyphs, not 10 of them. Catalog all of them, start there and move forward. The artifacts, this collection, there may be 4 or 5 different styles of writing. So it's not even that easy. So, and you would only know that if you've seen thousands of pieces. Mike knows that, Josh knows that, others know it. The audience might not, but so, you know, catalog 10 to 20,000 images, arrange those based on format and style, and go from there. In passing, in lab time, I've been in the lab last couple months working with technicians, and they're all over this stuff. They really normally this does not come to their day job, this kind of stuff. So they're excited about it. And we had one artifact that we were analyzing, and my friend took a photo of the backside of it. Here's actually one that has some of this
Yeah.
writing.
Yeah.
So, anyways, he took a photo of something similar to these, and I didn't tell him anything. We actually didn't tell the LLM anything because we want it to be as real or uh, trustworthy as possible. So the hieroglyphs that he put in, all he did was say, these were found on the back of a ceramic artifact. That's all he said. The LLM took like 3 to 5 minutes to cross-reference, and it came back saying, this is very similar to Olmec script. I was looking at my friend like, really? And it offered a loose decipherment of a woman, a priest, a holy woman who was having babies with the gods. I was like, did it really just? And
Wow.
this piece on the other, it didn't. I didn't share that, but the other side is a woman holding a baby in the air. It's like, how the fuck did that come up with that? It's kind of, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, in this realm, maybe not your audience, but other viewers, other people, there's a lot of wacky ideas and interpretations, and people have already messaged me a bunch saying, "Oh, I can read them. I figured it out." It's like, "Oh, really? Well, it must have been easy, huh? Or they were the chosen one." But you've got a lot of light language and channelers and people who can sometimes really muddy the waters. I don't want to be mean towards them. I think they can do whatever they want, but what's coming through at times is not very coherent. So I don't know what to do with that. And you want to talk about channeling? We work with Bashar channeling. So
Yeah.
he's very clear. He's crystal clear. And he's delivered very valuable information on these artifacts that helped guide this research many years ago. So I'm not opposed to channeling. I think channeling's an amazing thing. I think we're channeling right now. I think we all channel our special experience through this life. So um, I'm open to that, open to psychics, open to all those possibilities. But like I did share previously, the structure, the the writing style is very similar to the Epi Olmec script, the La Mohara script. So I'm trying to stay on planet Earth and stay grounded and work with things that I see are possible. But again, I do have to, give an acknowledgement to the fact that these are out of the box in every way. You have to expect the unexpected. So, yeah, deciphering those glyphs is going to be big. Can't say when that's going to happen or who's going to do it first, but long overdue. And part of that is even having the time, energy, money to invest in that and not be told by your wife or your friends that you're wasting your time. These are fake, blah, blah, blah. So, I have no wife and kids, so, joke's on me. But I like studying these. I'm really passionate about them. And that aspect alone of the languages, we could use help. People like Mike and others have access to big, big collections. So, yeah, I'm grateful that other people are contributing where they can. And I think that topic is very understudied. And again, this collection, these artifacts, it's just complex. You got to see them. You got to look at them on a table and let your mind wander because you might figure one out, but there's like 9,999 more for you to. Every one of them is one of one. No, no molds, no mass production. These are handmade. People on Twitter have also, I keep bringing up Twitter, but it's a platform where I'm sharing this stuff and I don't really care what people think, but they're going to comment what they comment and they're going precision artifacts. These look like doodles. You're right. They do. When we're using the word precision, your mind is going into modern CNC lathe, perfect angle precision, which is great, but it has nothing to do with this topic. These are precision handmade. Precision meaning, for example, this artifact, which I did not report in the paper, but might come out in another one. It's flat on this surface and concave here, right? So it's a curved disc. Then the wall thickness, you can't even really see, is about a quarter of a millimeter between the precision is not these are not 3D printed. They're not machined, they're not cast. They're handmade. The precision I'm talking about is in the context of the material because the material it's hard. So you would think, oh, you would need Dremel tools or dental equipment, something very fine and mechanical to do these carvings. The precision I'm talking about is the chemical precision, the manufacturing precision, which is an atomic or nanoscale formulation, but also the tooling is not just scratches. They're beveled edges, they're relief carvings, they're very highly detailed. So, and again, by hand, you can see where some of the lines cross over. You can see, that doesn't tear me down, right? Someone made these by hand, is my estimation, whether it was human hands or hybrid hands, we'll find out. There's one piece in particular that we're going to be studying that I found fingerprints on, fingerprints that do not look like our fingerprints. So, people are so stuck on the aliens. I'm like looking past that into the material, the structure. You can't see those fingerprints deep down in there if you're stuck on the impossible UFO carving. So again, I think all interpretations are welcome. You know, uh, I'm learning just like you guys are learning. I'm happy to share this material in a way that is interactive and people can weigh in. And it's not like on a podium, me telling you, oh, you need to think this or you don't need to think this. You can think whatever you want. And, if these make you feel good, that's great. If they don't make you feel good, that's also great. There's other topics of mystery and things out there, but I will say, unless you've physically seen them, physically interacted, you cannot make that final judgment. You can feel however you feel, but if you think they're fake, at least come see them to make sure that they're fake, because that experience is what hooked all of us researchers, all of us collectors. We all thought they were fake. I could go to sleep at night if they were fake. I would be happy to close this door and move on, but man, they just grab you. They just speak to you in a way that is not in English. It's not in Spanish. It's in this universal um, archetypal symbology of spirituality, life. So yeah, it's a big crossroads of like science, spirituality, the unknown. So not everyone's like, comfortable treading these waters, but if you just stay open and stay positive, you'll see what you're meant to see, I think. You know, Me personally, I don't align strongly with the negative side of the ET interpretation. Um, I think that's a broken record, personally. I think they're waiting on us to grow up a little bit and stop perpetuating such fear-based worldviews, So that's my vibe on these is like they're interesting. I'm positive about their provenance and their history coming from my experience, but still open to learn. Like, if it were to be clearly demonstrated to me that everything I've studied is actually this elaborate, ornate hoax, I would not kick and scream. It would be like, thank you. I see that, Until then, you know, it's anybody's guess. But little old me, I'm doing what I can. I've got some good friends who are helping. I'm grateful to the university professors who have extended their support, because that bridge is like that's what it's all about, basically. Um, and that bridge was considered to be impossible even 1 year ago, 3 years ago. So yeah, it's so strange to have university professors calling me saying, "Can we study your artifacts?" Like, you sure? You sure you want to study them?
Yeah. All right. So that you're doing great. I hope you stay on this path until you've exhausted every angle so that we learn everything we can. I mean, you didn't show it here, but there are stone books that
Mhm.
have the same etching and the same symbology. I mean, they created these things for a purpose, and I think it's up to us to figure out beyond the obvious of, their
Mhm.
crypto-terrestrial or extraterrestrial and hybrids and whatever. There's so much information. There may be even, like I think you've mentioned about DNA and other stuff.
It's
Um,
possible,
but there may be things that we can learn from it, whether
for
it's
sure.
the technology, whether it's anti-gravity tech from the UFOs. I think that may be inherent in all of the pieces. But last question for now. But hopefully I can have you on again at another time. So I bugged
Mhm.
Mike about this, but he may have misinterpreted my question. You mentioned that, like, you've got the Tula pieces and your pieces are from Jalisco. And granted, they're in the same neck of the woods in Mexico. Like when
Yep.
you, and what's interesting too, just as a quick side note, like one of the pyramids or one of the small step pyramids on some of the pieces, maybe his collection, I don't remember whose collection, but they're clearly depicting the UFO sitting on top of step
Yeah.
pyramids. Like, so anyway, besides that, but where I was bugging Mike about, and he may have misinterpreted, is the geographic, it's not just the pieces themselves, but maybe the geographic location, and not just specifically, well, we got these from Tula and we got these from Jalisco. I mean, where exactly, I get that there's going to be some security and privacy concerns, but
Yeah.
they're digging out stuff like from the ground and they've got these like mini caves. I think it's important to document the exact geographical location of exactly what pieces came from where, and then reconstructing that into a 3D image. So then we've got all of these pieces literally in the sequence that they were meant to be found in, right? You
Right.
can't just pull it out of the ground and say, we found this. No, what's that may be one part of a puzzle of five pieces.
Exactly.
So
That's one of the big critiques by most everybody. And for years, we've tried to assemble professional archaeological teams to because you're right, this is a delicate process. If these are genuine, which I do believe they are, every step of this needs to be documented or measured or considered because there's a greater pattern there. How they were buried in what environment. So unfortunately, the world we live in is not as black and white and cookie cutter as many would like to believe. So some of that has begun. When I was in Mexico many years ago, we did that. We geotagged every spot we went to. We took excessive measurements and photos. Um, for those reasons because you come back to that information and go, oh wow, that piece was there, and you see that in the overarching the data sets. So you know, I'll say that when I first got involved with Nassim, he already had a collection of about 300 pieces in our lab. I did not have to go anywhere. So I came in at a laboratory setting at a high level of people who had already invested heavily and done their sniff tests. So I figured, hey, if Nassim is interested, it might be worth a shot. So, back then we didn't have any Tula artifacts. That site was not active the way it has been in the last 3 years, especially last year. So we weren't studying those artifacts because we didn't have them. Now, Mike has been very active in this region. And to my unfortunately, I'm not there on the ground. And with the political environment of Mexico and the inner workings of these people and the land ownership, yeah, it's not as crystal clear as one would hope. And again, these people are genuinely impoverished. They're not poor, they're broke. They have the water gets shipped into these places daily. They live on nothing. So these vaqueros, these guys who go out digging in these places, at least in Tula, from my understanding, there was a gas pipe, a gas line that was being worked on in the city with big excavators, and they found a bunch of stuff digging a new line. This is like over a year ago. Since then, they got GPR radars, they got all these equipment, and they've gone digging, 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 and they keep finding more and more and more. So this collection has some research. I've been the first through Mike and my friend Pam to research these pieces. It's still very preliminary, but there's some good evidence there. It hasn't been shared. Mike has shared a little bit online, but nothing formally, nothing like in a report. So, it costs money to do all this stuff, and we're doing it all. I don't know how we do it, but we keep doing it. And the Tula collection, it's another body of evidence. It's another type of material. It's another style of art that's unique. I personally would prefer not to lasso all this up and round it up into one big alien artifact thing because it's more nuanced than that. The Tula collection is its own thing. This collection is its own thing. Ironically, the original collection that Nassim and my friend Klaus Dona had access to 17 years ago sits in private hands, has never been photographed, has never been studied. Many of these collectors in Mexico are extremely guarded. on these materials. Many of them ethically will never sell them. They find that to be immoral. But guess what? Not everyone feels that way. Some people go digging, they're poor. They can sell these things for, you can buy these artifacts for about 100 US dollars.
Well, the small ones, the bigger ones, like the mask.
They're increasing in price, but there's a chain. These do come from the earth. They do come from dig sites, and some of them are documented, but it's the way of the world. These people need to make a living, and if they can go out on a weekend camping trip and find a handful of these and sell them for a couple $100, they're going to do it. And that's how they've gotten around the world. And the National Institute of Anthropology and History of Mexico in 2009 was involved in the very first museum of these artifacts. That museum lasted about 8 months. It flooded. The building was damaged. I wasn't there. Rumor has it the artifacts were seized and the original collectors have never seen them again. These were donated by local people to the government. The building flooded, the artifacts got packed up, and they never got back to the owners. There's rumors that they went here, they went to Spain. I don't really know where they went, but that Institute of National History and Anthropology, they have written statements, they have written documentation of them cataloging and measuring these artifacts. So there's a written statement by them in 2014 that is addressed from a local researcher in Mexico. It's addressed to the head archaeologist at the time. And the communication, the letterhead, it's very brief, it's very short, and it says that we don't recognize these materials as genuine. We don't know of any real archaeological sites in the area, and we thank you for your inquiry. Kind of just like there's nothing to see here. These are
They could say that all they want, but when you pull glue off the eye and when you drill a hole into these pieces, and many of them, I don't know, what's the youngest that has come back with a carbon date? I know 8 to 20,000 years old, but what's the youngest that you've seen?
6,500.
Yeah, I mean, where's the person that's got the glue and the old whatever to fake carbon dates? Like, so the Mexican government or that one official who was speaking on behalf of the Mexican government at that time, they could say all they want, but the data, the science is agnostic. It doesn't lie, and these things.
That's where I come from. That's my data. Those are my tests, and I hope that they are received in positive light. You understand? Because I'm not here to point fingers or blame people or say you fucked up or you're this or you're bad. I kind of don't blame them. It's like for some people, and I know you know this. When I say some people, I mean academics.
Mhm.
Man, they can be so hard-headed.
Yeah.
Come on. It's like, that written statement is an easy out. It's the easiest out. Come on. Just look at them. They're fake.
Yeah.
Well, did you measure them? Did you test them? Have you been to the site? So who knows, that is going to come back around some way, somehow. I kind of, have considered all of this when I'm publishing the research and doing all this work. Like, it's going to come full circle somehow. I'm aiming for the positive net outcome. I don't do this for resale. I don't do this to make money. I do this because they're very interesting, and I believe that they deserve more credibility, more attention. So I think that tone and that approach is a safe one. It's like, prove me right or prove me wrong. Either I'm completely wacko and made all this up and somehow it works, or they're genuine and they're real. So some people have started to inch closer towards me and say, I'll put my neck out there, I'll say it, but I need to see them, I need to study them. I read your paper, it's great, but I got to do it my own. So, maybe one day Mexico will rejoice and um, provide spaces and events and a recognition of this history. I think there's some nuance to all of that. I think that these are not Mexican artifacts. I think they were here before Mexico was Mexico. I think they were here before a lot of things. So again, it's kind of like what I brought up earlier. Who's the official? Who's the guy who waves their hand and says, you know, I am the official orator of them being real or not. I don't know if one person can do that. I don't even know who that would be. So it takes like a big shift, perspective shift. And young professors have reached out to me. They're like, look, I can't tell everybody we're talking, but I want to know everything. So who knows? Maybe one day we'll be in Mexico City having fun and learning more and connecting with people. My goal is for this um, interdisciplinary, international convergence of people and minds that's outside of politics, religion, what you wear, what you eat. This is just a topic that I think is very unifying for people. I know that there's people in Germany, Japan, Kansas who think about this stuff all the time and don't have a way to dive in deeper or express themselves. So we hope to create events, museum events, gallery events that may build into something more official. But that's ironically the way I look at the pieces recently is like you and me. We would not have had contact if it weren't for something like this. So, outside of the idea of ET contact and the whole disclosure thing, these are making us contact each other and explore new realities together. So I think it's no matter what, it's a net positive. It's like I get to meet great people, share ideas, and like I said to you, it's so fun for me to watch people light up when they see them and not have to know all the answers today, right? It's like I know we want to figure it all out, but it's a true mystery. It's a real mystery. And by the way, if there's evidence of a hoax, please show me, tell me. Of course, we've tested fake pieces. I've met with people in Mexico who make fakes. They do a pretty good job. If you put them all out on one table, you might not be able to tell the difference because it's all so new. But yes, for the collectors and researchers who are in the know, it's a troubling situation, right? Because it's like they're making the real money. It's like I'm losing money doing it. They're making money making fakes,
Yeah.
but they pollute the market. They definitely give ammunition to the haters, like, oh, that shit's fake. It's like, I agree, but that doesn't mean that every single one is fake. And hopefully, with these events, people can really see it for themselves. As much as I show photos and videos and talk my head off, it's like, you really have to sit with them and see them. And I know Mike and other folks are working towards that. I think there's a group in Florida that just opened a museum where they have a few pieces. So if you're around and you can make the trip, check them out and take it all with a grain of salt. Think for yourself. If whether my paper is peer reviewed or is published or not, you can read it. You can consider the ideas, and it's not dangerous for you to think about things that you might not consider. You know what I'm saying?
Definitely, yeah. All right. So wait, a quick thought. So I've never been one as an, well, I'm still in academia, technically still publishing papers with research groups in longevity, but I was an assistant professor at Tufts for 15, well, not for 15 years, for 7 years, whatever, postdoc and all that. I've never been one to shy away from so longevity now is a big thing. Everybody and their mother is a quote unquote longevity expert. Even though
Right.
classically trained like that, I would never call myself longevity expert. I think it's something that it's like someone who calls himself an entrepreneur. Man, I've never heard Elon Musk call himself an entrepreneur. It's like the gold chain. Like you want to show you want. Anyway, so
Yes.
back in the day, Aubrey de Grey, who's a big figure in longevity, big with a big wizard long beard. 20 years ago or 25 years ago, when I was a grad student, we invited him for a talk, and nobody was thinking about longevity at the time, or increasing human lifespans or immortality, all of these things. And I've always put it out there. My goal is to live longer than anyone that's ever lived.
Mm.
I couldn't care less if the quote unquote scientific community thinks of me as X, Y, or Z. It's as you mentioned, there's so much of this small-mindedness that goes on, even amongst academics. You would think they'd be the last to be small-minded. So whether it comes to longevity and waving that flag of I couldn't care less, who knows that I'm in this boat, and now everybody's in that boat.
Hmm.
I think the same is going to happen with the stuff, whether it's your pieces, Mike's pieces, Nassim's pieces, everybody's pieces, trying to get
Hmm.
to the truth of the matter. And maybe 20 years from now, this is in the vernacular, like everybody just accepts it because we've gone through the science of it, right? So I've never been one to shy away from that stuff. And I'm sure I'm going to get comments like I did the last time with Mike's video of, I can't believe you're posting this. This changes my perspective of you. I thought you were a hardcore scientist. The other side of that is I am a hardcore scientist, and that I am engaging these ideas, which are based on the analyses that you've done that are not
Right.
inconsequential. This isn't like I look at it and I think it's real. It's the technology doesn't lie, right? So
Yes.
there's always going to be people that are naysayers that just aren't evolved enough or smart enough or whatever it is. And I don't even like to say it. It sounds so negative to say, but you're doing great. I appreciate your work. If people want to support your work, I know you're at the Harmonic Research Group on Instagram. And are there other ways that people can donate? Because you've got to live. And like you said, there are no
Yeah.
t-shirts. I mean, I've got t-shirts, but nobody's buying them. I'm
Yeah.
wearing
Yeah.
them though. But, so the long story short is you've got to continue your work. And
Yes.
I would hate for your work to be exhausted because you don't have any funding. So how can people support your work if they'd like to do that?
Well, I really appreciate that. Currently, I don't have like a direct off ramp for that. I don't have links for GoFundMe or a Patreon yet. I think that will likely emerge at some point because the research has many facets, many avenues. But my good friend Pamela of AET Try, she's formed a nonprofit group called Team, which is uh, a group of researchers like myself and others who have been involved in this project. So this nonprofit group will be a tax deductible way for people to donate towards the research. All of the funds go towards laboratory um, testing. Thankfully, through some of the relationships I've been developing, university campuses are opening up because most of my research has been done through private facilities. So I'm paying, you know, top dollar for this equipment, but it's so worth it and it's so fun to be there. But with the university professors, they got all that stuff in their classroom, and the hourly rate is like nothing by comparison. So I appreciate the support. People can just stay tuned through Twitter and Instagram. My email is harmonicresearchgroup@gmail.com. People have reached out and shared ideas and support, so I'm reachable. And as things develop, I likely will have some more um, official avenue or off ramp to donate. Um, those museum events and those tours or traveling events that I mentioned might become part of that dynamic of, part of that too is like, I want people to see them. I don't want this to be a $500 event. I would like it to be $5 or free at some level for
YouTube,
anybody.
you
Any,
could,
yeah,
you,
YouTube is another one. So I got to get my studio and the whole thing set up. But yeah, just sort of juggling as much as that stuff is important, and it really is because it's great to do the research. But if you can't communicate it or get it across, like no one even knows. So those I'll get better. I'll get better, do some streams, do some Patreons. But we have some ideas for funding for the research. So it's all in the works and it's emerging. I'm grateful for you. You've been very much on this topic and keen to the research. So I appreciate your support. And, we touched upon briefly the academics and sort of this limited thinking. And I can't remember exactly who the quote comes from, but the most basic understanding I would share is that um, a key characteristic or a hallmark of general intelligence, watch out, is being able to entertain an idea without accepting it. You can play with it, figure it out, find something that no one's seen, and throw it away if you don't like it.
the
And
challenge, the challenge there, Trevor, is that uh, I just want to add a little bit to it because I think it's a great quote. You'll have some types, academic types, intellectuals who uh, don't consider the ideas of everyone because they've achieved a certain level of status and they can only get ideas from other people who have levels of that similar status.
right,
Me, this is small-minded, in-the-box thinking, and it's limited. Now, you could say with people who are not in that level of educational status, if you listen to everyone, you've got to weed through literally all
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah,
shit. There's
yeah,
going to be a lot more shit. And the probability of a great idea coming out of that is far less than coming out. But I'd argue that both are essential. And I think I'm the same way like as you were. I'll entertain every idea. It doesn't mean I agree with it. I don't care how crazy or not that it is, but there may be something that someone's onto that doesn't have professional credentials that has hit the nail on the head for whatever reason that if it isn't
definitely.
considered, yeah. So I'm with you on that. I just want to add that little bit of a
That's a
caveat.
perfect addition. I think that's the sweet spot you're talking about. It's like having a foot in both worlds, I guess, because you do need to be a human being and make mistakes and learn. And yeah, the a lot of my friends and colleagues are in their 70s, 80s. They're a different generation. So, uh, now we got the kids under us that are
Oh, you're
even
still
more.
young. You're still young, like
Yeah,
30 something, what, 30?
31, but
Yeah.
you know, getting old and gray. But all these kids now, with TikTok and everything, I mean, information is traveling fast, and I think that's part of the fun for me is being able to um, tell the story and share the information. And man, it's so fun. I don't get to go to conferences or events all the time, but like the year I met Mike was 2023 at event called Stairway to the Stars. It's so fun to watch kids see the artifacts and don't say anything. Just let them hang out and read them and watch them. And I don't know. It's like with the adults, you see like the reaction, you see the tension. With the kids, it's just like, this is really cool. So yeah, we got to return to that childlike worldview because our reality in our world is a miracle. Every day is a gift. Um, and these are some of the topics that I've been interested in recently, and that they may develop over the next couple of years into new things. The 0 point energy technologies and the things I worked with Nassim on. I, kind of wish I was doing that more because that's really crazy and fun too. It's also really expensive and hard to do. So, uh, who knows? Maybe that realm will come back in at some point. But for now, the artifacts and the megaliths are keeping me busy. And yeah, I'm so grateful for you. And with possible upcoming episodes, developments are happening. So there will be more to share. And I'm also being a bit tongue in cheek on this one to keep things that are developing in their proper space, you know? So stay tuned. Thanks again, and we'll talk soon.
Sounds good, Trevor. Well said. Have a great day. Looking forward to more.
Cheers. Take care.